Welcome back on the AM show, and we focus on the produce buying company and their woes, so to speak. Over the last 5 years, the market share has slipped from 30.88% to just about 8%. But how did we get here? How did we get to the point where the payment of staff salaries has become a problem? How did we get to the point where tons of cocoa beans are stuck in farms and produce clerks are engaged in double trading to survive? Well, that's the latest that we've got from this development, and we're joined by our guests. Atta Mudasiru is a production clerk at the PBC Share Limited. We also have Fifi Boafo, he's public affairs manager at COCOBOD, and of course, Kwete Nate, our own investigative journalist here with Joy News. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you, for those of you who are on board. Hello. I think you would have to unmute, sir. Right. All right. Okay, so we have Mr. Boafo joining the conversation. He is public affairs manager with COCOBOD. Let's start from how exactly we got to this point. It's been pretty curious the way things have developed up to this point over the last 5 years. What would you say has happened over this period?
Well, my understanding of the situation is that since 2013, the company has been struggling, and the struggles stem from the fact that the kind of capital they've used in financing the activity has, in an extent, brought some challenges to them, because you realize that the financing cost has been a problem for PBC. I am not at PBC, so it will be difficult for me to have the full details and understanding of the situation. But the information we have available is that if you consider what the situation they find themselves in and the information available, it means that something has not gone right, and that is the more reason why they find themselves in this situation.
That is quite a situation. We've now been joined by Kwete Nate. I want him to set the tone for the conversation we're about to have. I want him to give us some background to what exactly has happened that has culminated in this. I wanted to start with him even before I get to you. So, Mr. Boafo, just hold for me and let's trace it. Now, I'm sure you've seen that latest Hotline documentary. Then we'll get proper reactions to it. But Kwete, a very good morning to you, and more power to your elbow on the work you've been doing. Hello, Kwete.
Hello, Ben.
Good to have you join the conversation this morning. I was just saluting you for the yeoman's job that you've been doing. But tell me, what exactly led us down this rabbit hole, if you like, checking out the produce buying company, and what did you find when you went down that hole to check what?
Well, Ben, so what led us down to that hole, I will not be able to categorically say. But when we began hearing reports, when we began reviewing their documents, it became clear there was something to investigate, because our concern was that this was Ghana's biggest indigenous cocoa buying company, and there was the need to highlight what was happening there. As at the time we set out to investigate, staff salaries were in arrears for 3 months. National service intake had been suspended. Welfare loans were not being paid, even though staff had applied. We had also cited a letter which had been written by the former CEO, serving notice that they wanted to restructure PBC, including downsizing, because of the financial constraints they find themselves in. So when we went on the ground, the picture was no different from what the report that we had gotten, and clearly some of the depot clerks and district managers we spoke to stated what the challenges were. They were alarmed that their market share was falling. However, they weren't getting the needed money to buy cocoa. And they cite last year, for instance, the light crop season, they weren't able to buy cocoa. Even in November, when they got money from PBC headquarters, it was 5 weeks into the cocoa season where their competitors had bought a chunk of cocoa, from the farm. So, Ben, that was the situation we found when we went to the ground.
PBC is concerned. Just 5 years ago, it stood at around 30.88%. Now it has fallen to a paltry 8%. What do they have to share with you on that?
So when I spoke to management, the concern they raised was the fact that it's all about money issues. Depending on the time they get the money, that's when they buy the cocoa. And at some point in time, the banks weren't lending to them. So what they did was they usually wait for COCOBOD. Once COCOBOD provides the money, that's when they also disperse it to the purchasing clerks and then district managers and then the depot clerks to buy cocoa. But what is interesting has to do with the whistleblower who brought this issue up. His point was that once PBC begins, buying cocoa at a single-digit market share, then the alarm bells have ticked. And for me, that was the whole point of this thing, to raise or bring to the fore the plight of PBC so that we need to be taken. Because this is a company that employs 740 staff, and its commissioning clerks are in the range of 15,000. And should PBC collapse, you can imagine a burden it will place on many families and breadwinners.
And just my final point, touching on salaries and staff, 740 of them, and all of that. For those you interacted with, in terms of staff salaries not being paid, how exactly did they feel? What was their reality? If you could share a little bit of that with us. Hello, Kwete. Kwete, can you hear me? Hello, Kwete. It appears we've lost Kwete Nate, but thank you very much, Kwete, for joining the conversation. He's an investigative journalist with JoyNews, and he put together this latest work on the produce buying company. I'll come to you again, Mr. Boafo, if you're still with us, and I can see you now. What do you feel? You were sharing with me how it had all happened, but on the back of some of the basics we've been hearing, 740 staff, salary payments are in arrears, the clerks are engaging in all sorts of double dealings and all of that. How long have you been at post, if I may ask, as public affairs manager?
I've worked as a public affairs manager for about 3 years.
3 years now. Within that period, what would you say has been the health of the produce buying company within that period? Has it deteriorated any?
Well, as a public affairs manager for COCOBOD, not for PBC, but obviously, yes, prior to working as a public affairs manager, I've worked as the chief executive office. So yes, I get to know what is happening in some of these companies. As I indicated, the situation of PBC is one that has had a challenge they've been dealing with over the years. I think the period I've gotten to know things happening in PBC, they've had some challenges. Indeed, COCOBOD had to intervene. Just as Kwete indicated, the major problem PBC have been facing has to do with raising finance for their activities. And the fact that they were struggling to do so, COCOBOD, together with the Ministry of Finance and SIGA, had to come up with an arrangement that will ensure that they are able to raise capital for their business. And also, another part of that arrangement was that instead of going to the bank to raise a guarantee before COCOBOD gives them money to do business, we have a special arrangement that did not require that they go to the bank to raise a guarantee, because by doing so comes at a cost to PBC. So we are able to take off that cost and then allow them to operate at not such a high cost as they would have if they were to go to the bank to raise a guarantee. Of course, going to the bank has also been a challenge for them because of their situation. But yes, PBC has had its own challenge. But the point is, there's a need for us to help them get out of the situation. And that's exactly what we're working on.
So in other words, they've also struggled with liquidity, and you're trying to stem the tide of that situation. But how if that support were not to have come in the interim, could it have been disastrous for the PBC? Because it is obvious then that they have liquidity challenges, and knowing the market to be what it will be, or what it is currently, as far as even supporting agric is concerned, it's quite a problem. So I'm just looking at this scenario where if COCOBOD hadn't intervened, if you're not triggering some of what you're doing now, what would be looking at as far as the PBC is concerned?
Well, if you are in business and then you need finance to run the business and the finances are not coming in, obviously the effects will be huge. So yes, the anticipation is that, but for the intervention, the situation of PBC would have been worse. However, we are at a stage where there's the need for us to intervene, because we believe that even though we have about 65 license buying companies, PBC is one of the key license buying companies we do business with. So if there's any reason for us to intervene and ensure that PBC is able to stay and work, then COCOBOD will be prepared to do so, and that's precisely what we are working on.
Let me bring in Vivian Bwedi. She is Deputy CEO at the PBC. Vivian, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the AM show.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you join the conversation. We have known the PBC, the Produce Buying Company, over the years to be one of our recognized, most prestigious brands. We now hear that over the last 5 years, your fortunes have been dwindling, and that in fact your market share has fallen from 30.88% to a paltry 8%. What is happening at the PBC?
Thank you, and good morning to your listeners. Yes, PBC's fortune started dwindling way before the 5 years that we are all talking about, that before 2016. PBC has been without working capital from its inception. So PBC basically relied on COCOBOD, seed fund, and loans overdraft from the financial sector to be able to augment its operations and being able to operate over the years.
Quick intervention. You say since its inception. When specifically are you speaking of?
Okay, PBC, the shares of PBC was floated in 2000.
Okay.
So that was when PBC became a limited liability company and was also put on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
All right.
So from that time onwards, we've always depended, even before then, we depended on COCOBOD because we're part of COCOBOD. And after that, when we were weaned off, we then depended on COCOBOD and loans overdraft from the financial sector to be able to operate effectively. As time had went by, the finance costs from these operations were becoming higher. And then one thing we all have to understand is that PBC depends on the margins we receive from hauling and purchasing of cocoa. And these margins we get from COCOBOD. So if the operation cost is not up to the margins, definitely there will be issues. And when you look, and anyone can go onto our website, we have all our accounts, because we are listed, we try to be as open as possible. All the accounts are there. From 2017, we had loss as high as 172, that's the 2016-2017, 172 million loss. And the loss started in 2013, around 8 million, then it just kept on going up. In 2019, just as Fifi was saying, that was when COCOBOD intervened, and then we decided to solely rely on COCOBOD seed fund for our operations because the cost of finance was quite high, and we couldn't also go to the bank to borrow because previous borrowings had not been paid. As at 2019 September, we owed 715 million Ghana cedis to banks, to COCOBOD, to staff, to statutory bodies in Ghana. And this is not record that has been hidden. All our correspondence to all our stakeholders have this data and facts. And you could cross-check this with SIGA, with COCOBOD, and with the Ministry of Finance. So it was at that point that the banks were around 495 million. And they were magnanimous. We did a restructuring. So we had to sit back and look at the financial restructuring of the company. So that's how COCOBOD stepped in to be the sole provider of seed funds for PBC to operate. So that is why the narrative has been that we have to wait for COCOBOD seed fund to be able to, because we cannot go to the bank to borrow again.
You cannot go to the bank to borrow as a PBC or as an entity. You have to wait on COCOBOD. COCOBOD has also had its woes within the last few years. In fact, we've spoken about the cocoa bonds and other issues that have come up. I'm not saying that necessarily that is an issue, but we know that they also bedeviled with their own worries. But I'm just wondering, when I go to your website, I look, you speak about the fact that these ailments started since, in fact, before even 2016. You go as far back as 2000 when the PBC was listed on the stock exchange. But I'm looking at your progression and some of what you tout. You say that you have over, the years received recognition. You've been in the Ghana Club 100. At a point, you were 89th, in fact, and you moved to number one in 2010. So 89th position in 2008, number one in 2010.
Exactly.
You successfully retained that position in 2011, making your entity one of the few companies in Ghana to retain this position in succession for a number of years. When I look at all of these feats, the fact that you are judged leader in the agribusiness sector by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, the GIPC, in 2012, you received international awards. You were still grappling with the same situation around the time, right? It was the same situation. So what exactly has changed now that is resulting in what we're seeing? That's what I find curious.
Okay. So I wouldn't say we were in a different time period and we're operating differently. At that time, you could go to the bank, borrow, and then start the pre-season purchases. Even though cocoa is officially open in October, every one of us here knows that we normally do a pre-seasonal activities before the start of the season. And then once it is October, then we all start the season, we start the holiday and all that. So you could go to the bank, do all the pre-seasonal activities that you have to do, get your stuff ready for the season so that as soon as the season picks up, you're able to roll along. However, this time around, we would have to wait for the syndicated loans to come in. Around that time, and just as I indicated, PBC could not borrow on the strength of its balance sheet because from at a point, then our liabilities were exceeding our capital. So it was difficult to go to the financial sector to borrow. Even though we're doing it, we were getting a high cost. When you look at the finances, I just want us to limit ourselves to 2017 and 10. Our net finance expense in 2017 was 150 million. Meanwhile, the gross profit for that period was 180 million. So clearly, it tells you that whatever operations you are running, you will definitely run into a loss. And persistent loss over time has brought us to where we are today. That is why when it got to a point, we just have to put a stop to the borrowing and then decide that COCOBOD has a cheaper source of finance, and this is open to all LBCs. However, other LBCs will have to get guarantees, just as Fifi was explaining. But for PBC, the Ministry of Finance and the other stakeholders, SIGA had to come in to give us a special dispensation to be able to access COCOBOD seed fund. if you check your records, you realize that COCOBOD seed fund doesn't drop 1st October. It will normally take some time for it to go through some processes before we are given the funds. But I might say that once the funds are in, COCOBOD gives us a portion of it for us to go to the market, buy the produce, and deliver to them, and then we start our operations from whenever we receive the funds. So that is the difference between this period and that period. And
would you say, briefly, would you say that maybe in light of what we know now, maybe we should try to use the mechanisms that were available then? I know you've said that on the back of your balance sheet, you can't go to the banks, but should we revert? Maybe if that system worked, you know what they say, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Okay, so aside borrowing, you also have to look at the finance cost that comes to it, that comes along with it. Now, we could still maintain this same system and, however, have an improved version of what we are doing now to give us better results than what we have now. Because we rely solely on COCOBOD seed fund, anytime there are hitches or there are issues, definitely would also run into cash flow problems. And I believe that is what happened last year, because if you check the previous year, 2019-2020, we were able to pay our salaries throughout the whole year. It was only in 2022 that we had the 3-month gap because we were expecting a certain amount from COCOBOD. We didn't get that amount from COCOBOD. So we were not able to do the sort of operations we intended to do. So it's not, we could have an improved system of what we are having now, and the system would still work. However, PBC itself has to work on itself. So it's not just looking at the financial restructuring. We also have to look at the operational restructuring of the company, and that is what management is currently tackling now, how to get the turnaround faster, be able to go back to COCOBOD and get the seed fund and go back to the market, and that is what we are working on. We also have to look at the staff side of it. So PBC is currently going through some phase of restructuring to be able to stay profitable and be able to reverse the negative trend on our balance sheet and so resume our normal operation.
Right before I let you hold, so I bring in Mr. Boafo, do you feel it is apt? Do you feel it is needed, maybe as part of the cure, to wean your entity off dependency on COCOBOD? Is it a possibility? Is it something that we should even be contemplating? What do you think, Madam Wedi?
Just as I indicated earlier, COCOBOD seed fund is the cheapest source of funds every LBC would want to have. And because out there now, at least the minimal interest rate you could get is about 36-38% now. But with COCOBOD, so if you're able to do a perfect blend, 80% of your financing comes from COCOBOD, maybe 20% from external sources, then you will be able to at least achieve some level of profitability. The LBC market we have a cap, so you only rely on the margins you get per ton. So all the operations that has to go on to get that ton has to come from that margin. So we are normally, I say, cost sensitive in the LBC space, because you need to ensure that whatever loans or whatever facility you are getting, the best working capital we would have been equity. For the shareholders to come together and say, now we want to give, or some strategic investor brings in equity, that would have been the perfect cure for our issues. But we know the problems when it comes to equity raising in Ghana. It will take a while. It's not immediate. So that is why we are trying to put the company well, reshape the company to be able to attract such investors. Now, winning totally off from COCOBOD, that is, when you are winning us from COCOBOD, then you are giving us a cheaper version of sort of finance, and that could work. But so that happens, and if we are still operating in the same financial space as every other Ghanaian who is going to borrow, or any other company that is going to borrow, it will be very difficult to operate.
Vivian, hold for me, because when I come back to you, I would also like to find out how the reshaping is going and what you're going to do in terms of raising equity. But let me come back to Fifi. We know that as COCOBOD, you have your own demons to fight. But this dependency by the PBC on your entity, especially as the syndicated loan, often doesn't come in. Sometimes it is not as timely as we would want it. Do you think progressively, moving forward, we should do something about that situation. Does it put any pressure on you at all as COCOBOD?
And as I indicated, PBC is a very important LBC to us. So any effort to help PBC stabilize is one we are very much concerned and prepared to do. So yes, we are looking at our own financial situation and how best to position ourselves such that we are able to deal with our responsibilities. Seed fund is one of the things we do or give out to support the LBCs and their operations. So in as much as we continue to give seed funds to LBCs, PBC will surely have that priority as we help in stabilizing the organization. The wish would have been that PBC will have other means of supporting the activities, because for a license buying company, the expectation is that the license buying company will be able to raise some finances aside COCOBOD. But in the situation they find themselves, of course, we also acknowledge that that is a challenge they have. And what is important for us to do at this point is to ensure that PBC stays afloat and is able to perform its responsibilities.
How do you feel COCOBOD can help on that journey in terms of stabilizing? Look, as a country, we're looking at debt sustainability. The PBC is saying we can't even go to the banks because our balance sheets are not balancing. So we need this assistance as of this point in time. But as a mother body, so to speak, as COCOBOD, how do you think moving forward you can aid them? If they could go to the banks, and if the banks were giving them loans or concessions at a certain rate, they obviously wouldn't come down to your doorstep to bother you. What are the means, the mechanisms that the COCOBOD is contemplating in that regard?
Well, just as Vivian indicated, even in a situation where PBC will be able to go to the banks, they will surely prefer to come for the seed funds because that is a cheaper source of financing. Because if you compare what they get, the interest rates they have to pay to the banks, and then how much they have to pay for securing the seed fund. The seed fund is a cheaper source of financing for them as a business. And that's what we are doing for them. For us as COCOBOD, it is our wish to have PBC continue operating. So we shall continue giving them the seed funds. Of course, the timeliness of it, we are also looking at our structure to see how best we are able to bring in the money early enough for our operations, and of course the operations of companies that rely on us. So when we are able to bring in the money early enough, then we'll be able to also give PBC money early enough for them to also start the season just like their competitors are doing. One of the things we need to also appreciate is that despite the financial challenges of PBC, the competitiveness of the industry now is also one thing that is affecting PBC. You realize that PBC, when it started, enjoyed some monopoly. Today, that is not the situation. We have about 65 license buying companies operating within the space. So if we are looking at the situation as it used to be some years ago and say that because the PBC share has dropped, it is as a result of incompetence or as a result of bad management, that cannot be the exclusive reason why PBC finds itself in this situation, because now there is competition. Of course, some of the companies they are competing with are companies that have funding outside Ghana, and then it's a cheaper source of funding. So it also aids such companies to be able to compete better and stronger. The first three companies that are performing within the space now, the first two of them are foreign-based companies. Then you have PBC. So clearly, the challenge PBC face is one that requires support, and that's exactly what we are doing, ensuring that they have the finances such that they will be able to also operate. Because in terms of structures, PBC has a very good system out there where they have direct contact and access, and of course built reputation over the years with the farmers. So PBC, I'm sure, will continue to operate, and the COCOBOD, as we also consider our financial structure, will continue to support PBC in this regard.
But I'm a bit curious, though, this entire syndicated loan saga, some have said, or the facility, some have said they do not understand why we even have to do this year on year. It's like Ghana having a budget deficit every year and having to reach out to other organizations to support our national budget. This rut, where we have to wait for the syndicated loan, obviously has a trickle-down effect. It impacts the PBC and others, and it hobbles our work generally. How do we break that rut? Is that something COCOBOD is taking a look at? Because year on year, we've seen that sometimes there are delays, it leads to problems, yet every year, in terms of making the purchases, in terms of the produce and the selling and all of that, we have certain windows, we have a plan. Is it not possible to break that rut of a syndicated loan?
So Ben, let me explain so that you get an understanding of what a syndication is about. The syndication is not a loan to finance a shortfall in our budget.
No, I'm not talking of a shortfall. If I am not mistaken, you get it in advance so that when the production occurs, then you pay back. But I'm saying that year on year, I mean from a previous year, if you were to make in excess of what you were expecting, for example, what is the process so that eventually we wean ourselves of any syndicated facility so that we don't even need anyone to now come in, intervene until we are ready, we have made sales or we have bought and all of that? That's what I mean. I was only referring to the national budget from a different end. Okay,
I get it now. So the syndication, we've done the syndication for about 30 years, and doing one thing for 30 years require that you have a relook at that situation. Yes, there's some conversation ongoing within COCOBOD corridors to find different means of financing the crop. We are not there yet, but I know we have advanced the conversation to a certain level where management and the board are of the view that there's a need for us to find different means of addressing the situation. But bear in mind, the syndication has also served us as COCOBOD and as Ghana very well, in the sense that if you consider around November, December, where people are expecting that we'll have a challenge with our city because a lot of people are importing and then you require more dollars, that's when you have the syndication money coming in and is able to help shore up the city. So yes, the syndication plays its role. Apart from that, it also...
Are you saying, just quickly, my apologies for the intervention, are you saying that we cannot get past this intervention?
No, I made a point before I got to that point. The point I made earlier was that there's conversation ongoing, and the conversation is aimed at moving away from the 30-year system we've run, which is relying on the syndication. So yes, that conversation has been ongoing. I was only making the point that the syndication has also played a certain role where it has supported COCOBOD and how we finance their activities. Because, for example, if you look at a system where we go to Bank of Ghana to raise cocoa bonds, cocoa bills, for example, cocoa bills come with a high interest rate. If you just oppose it with how much you pay for financing the syndication is way less as if you compare to the cocoa bills. So yes, the syndication has served us well, but we also realize that you cannot rely on one system forever, and there is the need for you to look at different means of addressing your challenges or your situation, and that conversation is ongoing.
I see. Let me come back to you, Vivian. Do hold for me, Fifi. So there's also this bit about 740 of your staff, and apparently some of them have not received their salaries in a while. What is the latest development on that? What can you share with us?
We are updated on salaries. We paid up to March.
You paid?
We are updated when it comes to salary payment.
So up to what month have you paid?
March 2023.
Up to March?
Yes.
How long did it take before you could, resolve that? Because we heard for a while there have not been payments.
I think this point has been overstretched, if you may ask me. Yes, we're owing salaries.
I don't think for those staff who did not get there, especially in our economic situation, they felt it was being overstretched.
No, I'm talking about in the documentary, that point. Because we paid staff salaries in November. We paid the 3 months we were owing them in November, in the month of November. And since then, we've been updated till March. And you can call any staff and find out this information.
Okay. So at least the payments have been made. Right before I went to Mr. Boafo, you were talking about reshaping the company, that is the PBC. How much have you done in that regard and your equity challenges moving forward? Apart from depending on COCOBOD, what is the plan?
Yeah, so we are currently engaging our stakeholders, our major shareholders. We've engaged them, we've been engaging them over the past years on how to get equity into PBC. In fact, that was part of the original plan when PBC was listed, was to first do the listment and then issue more shares for equity. But the additional issues of shares have never materialized. I think in 2016, 2017 or earlier, management at an IAGM proposed a rights issue, which the shareholders did not take, and therefore that could not materialize. And then, but currently we are in talks with our major shareholders on the equity bit of it. But before you could do anything, you first have to look internally to see how to reorganize yourself to be able to look, at least when you are selling the company, it should look attractive for anybody who would want to put or invest money into it. So that's why I indicated that we are doing the financial and operational restructuring of the company. In fact, we came from COCOBOD, so most of the practice of COCOBOD were inherited, were part of PBC's culture. And that is what we are trying to change, that we are now into business and we should be business focused and minded. So that is the essence of the restructuring I talked about to be able to do this. We've done extensive talks on the equity issues with our shareholders.
Just before I let go of you, Vivian, just very briefly, this one is on a lighter note. Is the PBC still in the Ghana Club 100? And what can we expect from the PBC in 2023?
PBC is not in the Club 100. And in 2023, yes, our initial projection was 170. We've revised it to 130 due to our late start of the season.
130 what?
130,000 metric tons.
Right.
Yes. We are looking forward to having consistent funding from COCOBOD. The whole issue is getting the funding and getting it on time. That is the whole game changer. If you get it on time and you get the right funding, you'll be able to operate. This year, the cocoa sector, every year has its own peculiar challenges. Last year was the weather. This year, it's a different ballgame altogether. We are contending with our neighboring countries for the cocoa. So the competition is very, very keen. But thankfully, as we speak now, we still have funds on the field and our agents are actively on the market buying. So we are looking forward to a good season this year with the help of our stakeholders. And we pray that they continue to assist us so that we end this year successfully. Thank you very much.
Vivian, thank you so much for your time. Vivian Bwedi is Deputy CEO at the Produce Buying Company. Mr. Boafo, just hold for me. Let me bring in Atta Mudasiru, a production clerk at the PBC Shea Limited. Do we have Atta with us? Okay, so we'll get Atta on the line briefly and have an interaction with him. Mr. Boafo, so moving forward in 2023, it's obvious that the PBC has a plan. How is COCOBOD going to help them actualize this plan to gain self-sufficiency and also ensure that the value chain is seamless, at least from their end?
Well, the plan PBC has indicated is one we are aligned with. And we are in constant engagement with them. Vivian, you spoke to, is always in touch with our finance team, trying to find means of addressing their challenges. So yes, we appreciate the situation they find themselves in. We are committed to helping them come out of their situation, and we shall continue showing commitment to that promise we made to them that will help them get out of the situation.
It's an interesting bit when I asked her about whether the PBC was still in the Ghana Club 100, and she, not happily, but smilingly said no. I found that a bit, it pinched me a bit, because just a few years ago they were number one. In fact, one of the few entities to have done it in succession. and now they can't even be found on the radar from 1 to 100. Well, Mr. Boafo, any maybe final comments on this matter? We'll also try to get Atta Mudasiru, production clerk at the PBC Share Limited. I don't know whether you can make the time with us and maybe listen to what he says. I see you shaking your head. Any final comments you would like to leave us with? We can still have the conversation with Atta when we have him on the line and maybe take it from there. What would be your parting shots for us?
Well, our parting shots are that, well, PBC is an important license buying company. PBC requires the support of all of us as a people. And for us as Ghana COCOBOD, we shall continue to support PBC as they go through these challenging moments. It happens in business that businesses sometimes find themselves in difficult moments, but it doesn't mean that when such situations happen, we are supposed to just fold our arms and say that, well, it has happened and then it should end there. It is important for us as stakeholders to also come on board and ensure that we are able to save a very important company for the state. Because out of the 65 license buying companies, we have PBC is the only one that is state-owned. The rest are private sector companies, foreign and local. And yes, it's important we say PBC, and then we shall surely do that. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Boafo, for making the time to join us this morning. Fifi Boafo, Public Affairs Manager with COCOBOD. We've heard from Vivian Bwedi, the Deputy CEO at the PBC. We now have joining the conversation Atta Mudasiru. He's a production clerk at the PBC Share Limited. Mr. Mudasiru, a very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you, boss.
It's good to have you join the conversation. What do you do exactly as a clerk at the PBC?
Yeah, my duty is to receive raw material as in shea nuts and then hexane, and then also supervise control production process, and then also take records of finished products and as and when they leave the premises of the factory.
Okay, so as a clerk, how long have you been in this position, and what is it like? What has it been like over these years that you've been with the PBC?
Please come again.
I'm saying that as a clerk in this position, what has it been like over these last few years with the PBC? What is the routine and what has been happening in the PBC during this time?
Well, during this time, what we can say is that we are out of production for some time now, about 2 years or even more than that. And there are a number of issues that accounted for that kind of issue. And if you permit me, I will just list them for you because we have grouped them into 3.
Right. Before you get to that, so when you say you are out of production, you're speaking specifically for the shea end, not for the cocoa end, right?
Yes, for the shea nut factory.
All right. So now,
located at Bupe.
Right. So go ahead and tell us now what exactly has been happening and why you've been defunct, so to speak, for 2 years.
We, the staff here, we have been in the situation for a number of years now. And then as the issues were unfolding, we were trying to put them into groups. And then we have come up with 3 issues that have brought us in this condition. One of them is the lack of raw materials to run the factory. As a factory like this, we need raw material as the basic need. Then we are also lacking sustainable market because we have to produce. After the product, we have to sell before we are able to pay ourselves, and the market is not there. Then there is also lack of attention on the company by stakeholders. If I say stakeholders, PBC Share Limited didn't come up on its own. People put in their money, or organizations or government put in money to establish it. But if you build a company like that and you don't, pay attention to that to see how it is running, definitely this is where we find ourselves. So these are the 3 main areas that we have issues with the company. Other than that, the plant itself has no problem. If we get this, since the raw material and the market today, even the plant can run.
So the plant has no problem, but for 2 years, you've virtually not produced anything. That's what you've said, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you mentioned a lack of a ready market, a sustainable market.
Exactly, sustainable market.
Sustainable market. Because I was going to say that I know a lot of people dealing. In fact, I have a friend who goes up north, she even has women who harvest the shea plant, process it, and then they get it and come and make their products here and across. So when you say sustainable market, what exactly do you mean? Because the market is out there, isn't it?
Well, though this is not, I shouldn't be speaking on this, but the little knowledge that I know about it is that the company is a very big company, and we work under Ghana prisons. So we have to produce, and then 70% of our production is exported, 30% is to be sold locally. So those who come to buy, they buy in, let me say, 1 ton, 2 tons, or even less than that, and all those. So those people, I don't know. They don't come to our company as it is rated. And then even if they come, how much can they buy for us to make something at the end of the month? That is it. We have to be selling voluminously. Because if you have a plant that has the capacity to process 120 tons of shea nuts a day, so you imagine the volume of butter that will be coming out. So if you don't have a market, that can take up to at least a month, you are able to sell 200 metric tons of butter, 120 metric tons of butter. Then it means that you can't make any headway. Even if you have the raw material, you will not be able to produce because you will be having a large market to sell that large volume. That's what is happening. And, we should also be looking for market, which, as the current situation we are finding ourselves, even if you have to go and look for the market, you need resources to go and then look for the market. And where is that resource?
You also speak of a shortage of raw materials. How is that? Tie that into what you were telling me a short while ago.
That is the shea nut.
Yeah.
We used to have a lot of nuts all over. But now, with the absence of money, that is funds to buy the raw materials, we are unable to buy. Even as we speak now, we can't boast of buying even a bag of shea nuts. And then the season is even coming in. Again, the new season is just starting in 2 months' time. And that is the main thing. Even if we have market and we don't have this raw material, the shea nut to process, then it means that we can't do anything.
So what does that really mean? Are we falling back in terms of production, or what exactly is it? Is it that we don't have enough outgrowers? What is it?
No. PBC Share Limited per se, we don't have outgrowers. The market, we enter the market and then buy the available nuts.
I see.
But the time PBC Limited was buying the raw material for PBC Share Limited, that one I can't tell whether they were having outgrowers.
Okay.
Because there are times we used to get the raw material plain to the channel. We used to get them enough. So that one, as a junior staff, I can't be able to see whether they were having outgrowers. That one I can't tell. But when we stood on our own from April 2019, we entered the market openly and then buy.
So we've broached the subject of a lack of raw materials and a lack of a sustainable market. Now, you've also spoken about a lack of attention from the powers that be, government. From where you sit, I mean, there are shareholders. There's a shareholder system, I believe. But from where you sit, what would you like to see government or maybe even other establishments do to help your work, to aid your work? What do you want to see?
Like I said earlier, you see, the company, the factory itself, the plant itself has no major issues. So these are the major three things. But the two are very important at this moment, the market and the raw material. So if government can come to our aid and say, oh, PBC Share Limited will support you, like maybe working capital, to come on board again, so that you are able to produce. If you are able to produce, and then you have some other working capital to enter, and then look for the market and come, fine. And that's what we are looking for now. If we get government support, today, the company is good to go. So the major things that are drawing us back is the raw material in the market.
To wrap the conversation,
we appeal and we keep on appealing to the government and other stakeholders or other investors who can come to our aid so that the company will revamp. Because this is a company that is very large. We have the capacity, both storage and production capacity, or we have it, to be able to produce well. So we need a lot of raw materials so that the company can function to its full capacity. So we need serious investors or government coming in serious and take it upon itself that PBC Share Limited, I want to support it so that it will stand on its feet. And when we ask for, definitely foreign exchange and other things, we're benefiting from that. A very big company. But if nothing is done about it, then I'm sorry. The company is going down every day.
to wrap the conversation with you, Atta Mudassir, I'd like to find out, so basically you've been at post, but there's not been much to do as far as your outfit, your end of the PBC.
Not much. There is nothing to do.
Okay, not much. There's nothing to do.
Yes, let me add that. I don't know whether you will still come to that, but let me add that we are without salary since July 2020.
That was exactly what I was going to ask. So you've been at post, you are not doing anything, but has your salary been coming? So since you've started, please go ahead.
Not at all. The salary is not coming. We haven't been
Since when?
The last time we received salary was July 2022.
July 2022?
Yes, sir.
That was the last time you were paid?
Yes, that's the last month that we received salary.
How have you coped since that time? With inflation, with the cost of goods and services, how have you been able to keep body and soul together?
Those ones, we just say we leave it to God. Because we have been in the terrible moments of our life, as I'm telling you. We come to Bube here and see the workers in PBC Share Limited, and then those who have traveled to be doing something else, at least take care of their family. You see us, then you won't think that we have ever worked before. When they break, you have to quickly run out of the house before the children will start looking for you. Some of us, our children have dropped out of school. They can't go to school again because they are unable to do anything. Sometimes when they break, you even be thinking whether if God doesn't come to your aid, what the family will feed. Some of us have dependency. I myself, I take care of 2 old ladies. And then my brothers who have died and left their children under my care. Now when they break, they have to leave school and go for by day so that they will able to get something for their family. So look at what is happening. You enter Buffet Town, you will see the PBC workers. Some of them will go and then be digging foundations. Some of them will go and be digging manhole for toilets and other things just to get something for the family. And it's not forthcoming. That's the situation we have found ourselves.
So it means some of your staff, some of your colleagues have some of them left, just moved on?
Yeah, some did. Some did.
So just to wrap on that point, because that's my final point, what would be your plea to the PBC as far as this is concerned? Because it is obvious you want to work, so you are able to earn your keep. But
exactly.
As it is now, you're not doing any work, and like you say, since July 2022, you've not been paid. What will be your final words to the PBC? I was just speaking to Vivian Bwedi, who is the Deputy CEO. I'm sure she's still watching. What will be your plea to the PBC?
Thank you for that opportunity. We have been looking for this opportunity for a very long time. We will want to appeal to PBC Limited because, look, when the company was established, it is PBC Limited. They were providing the raw materials and everything for the company to run. At the end of the day, they would pay the salaries. So the nuts were all over. PBC Limited purchased a lot of nuts for the company. But the moment they withdraw, that one self, our manager told us that PBC Share Limited is now on its own. But we, the workers, we don't believe it. Though the PBC Share Limited is paying itself, the workers, but we don't believe it because there should be some document which is showing that we have been left on our own. And also, there should be a lot of evidence indicating that we have been left on our own. But we don't see something like that. All we hear is that PBC Limited, we are no more under PBC Limited. But we think that if we are under PBC Limited, maybe it will be better. Though they are also facing challenges, which I cannot talk too much about it. I don't know too much about it, but they are facing problems. But since they are our parents, they know everything about the company, how it started and where it is going. At least when it happens like that way, they'll be able to do something to help us. Though we have been expecting help from them for a very long time now, which is not coming, but we are still appealing to them to come to our aid, at least to say something about us, whether truly we are still under them. And if not, and they still don't want to take us back, then we appeal to them that they should do the needful and then do the necessary documentation and then let us stand on our own. Because our managers have been telling us that whenever they go to source for loans to run the company, because CBC is attached to the company, they find it difficult. So all these issues. So if it is that PBC Limited is still attached to it and PBC Limited too is not helping us, where are we now? So we are appealing to PBC Limited to do something very important for us. And also to the government. We are appealing. PBC Share Limited is on its knees, and if nothing is done in the next year to come, the plant also may be down. And that would be a very huge cost to the country.
Thank you, Atta, for joining the conversation. We feel your pain, and I know it's quite a struggle, but we're grateful that you took the time to join us for this conversation this morning. Atta Mudasiru is a production clerk at the PBC Share Limited. There's the cocoa arm, of course, there's the share arm as well, and it appears they are in the grips, the throes of quite a bit of chaos there. For him, together with some of his colleagues, since July 2022, they have not received any payment. We also had Vivian Bwedi, Deputy CEO at the PBC, Fifi Boafo, Public Affairs Manager at COCOBOD, and Kwete Nate, and our own investigative journalist here at JoyNews, joining the conversation. Stay with us, still to come. We're going to have that interaction with George Weafe about the spring meeting of the IMF. What's in it for Ghana? How far have we gone? More on that after the break.